Ladies and gentlemen, I call this meeting of the City Council to order. Please note that pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatoni's declaration of emergency dated March 15, 2020, this meeting of the City Council will be conducted via remote participation. We will post an audio recording, audio-video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting of the city's on the City of Somerville website and local cable access government channels. Now please rise for the prayer and pledge of allegiance.
Mr. President, let's begin this meeting with a prayer. God, grant this City Council the serenity to accept the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things that can be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. And now let's join in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
This is roll call. Councilor Klingon.
Present.
Councilor Mba.
Present.
Councilor White.
Here.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Present.
Councilor Strezzo.
Present.
Councilor Niedergang.
Here.
Councilor Davis.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Here.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Here.
Councilor Rossetti.
Present.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Here.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors are present. We have a quorum.
Do we have any moments of silence? Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes, I would like to remember the 30 residents of Somerville who've died of COVID-19. They were the daughters, sons, fathers, mothers, grandparents, friends and neighbors in our community, and I want to express my heartfelt condolences to their family and friends.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I asked that we this evening remember Mr. John Marks. He's actually my neighbor. He lives 2 houses down. He passed away suddenly just on June 17th, actually. And he was the beloved husband of Susan Pelham Marks, loving son of the late Russell and Dorothy Marks, dear son-in-law to Ernest Pelham and the late Catherine Farrell Pelham. Dear stepfather of Shannon and Brogan McGonigal of South Boston, and cherished brother of Kathleen Cercinkus and her husband George, Karen Collins and her husband Daniel, Russell and his wife Debbie, Robert and her wife Phyllis, my big family, Paul and his wife Cheryl, Stephen and his wife Jody, Brian Marks, who's also my neighbor. Just wanted to remember him this evening. It's funny, you can live 2 doors down from somebody, and I don't think we've really spoken all that often. People tend to keep to themselves sometimes, but I know I've knocked his door many times trying to engage when I was knocking doors, but I know his brother is going to miss him very, very much. I did speak to his brother the other day, and you know, he was 5 years younger than his brother, and he is. It just hit him like a shock. He was fairly young, so I want to remember him. And then lastly, I want to remember someone who Mayor Curtatone mentioned last week when we had the beginning of the budget hearing, I believe it was, Miss Aubrey Esters, who sat on our safe injection facility working group. Aubrey was a dogged, just hardcore harm reductionist, someone who walked, she walked the walk basically through her own experience. There's been some great articles written about her in the Globe. And I mean, the whole community, the whole harm reduction community is extremely at a loss. It's been a huge her work and her advocacy are really unmatched in this area. And so I'll just read a quick piece from the Globe article, and this is a quote from her. "I have lost lots of friends to overdoses, many in front of my eyes," she once said during an academic panel discussion as she pushed for safe injection facilities that could reduce risk for those coping with addiction. Informed by her own experiences using drugs and living on the streets, fierce when necessary, she let her eloquent voice ring out in City Hall, on a state commission, and in groups advocating on behalf of those who suffer, often unseen at society's neglected margins. That's who Aubrey was, and she was a very, very special person, and her work will be appreciated, but her presence will certainly be felt and missed in the harm reduction community. Thank you.
Thank you. The entire council would like to sign on to that. Councilor White? Councilor White, you there?
Thank you, Mr. President. I always forget to unmute myself. I would like to remember this evening Marjorie Tomeo. She passed away at 90. She was a lifelong resident of Somerville, and she lived in Browning Road for many, many years. She was sort of a fixture in the neighborhood. She lived there with her husband, the late Andrew J. Tomeo, and she had a number of children: Paul, Stephen, David, Andrea, I guess, Edward, Daniel, Gail, Mark, Marlene, Eileen, and John. So I knew the family for many, many years. So I offer my condolences to her and to the family.
Councilor Klingon would like to sign on to that. Are there any other moments of silence? Hearing none, I'd like to give a moment of silence for Richard LeBlanc, who lived on Autumn Street, passed away this past week. It's one of the first people I met when I started campaigning in Somerville. Grew up here, really loved the history of the city. I could tell you all sorts of stories about the past. Was a big fan of boxing, and he was a boxer and then later a referee. And he could tell you a lot of stories about boxing in Somerville and the history of boxing in general. He grew up during the golden era of boxing. Later on in life, he had mobility issues, and I was very happy to take him for rides to the polls so that he could vote. I'm really going to miss him. He was a good guy, and I would like to remember him tonight. So please rise for a moment of silence. Please be seated. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Item number 3 is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 28th.
This item will be laid on the table. Councilor Scott moves to take item number 39 out of order for immediate consideration. Any discussion on this? Here, no discussion. I believe we have Director Kress here to discuss this item. Does anyone object to having Mr. Kress speak for a moment? Hearing none. Mr. Kress, are you in the audience? Are you here? Let me see.
Mr. President, I can read the item while you look for him.
Thank you.
Item 39 is a request, the mayor requesting the acceptance of a $209,000 grant with no new match required from the Commonwealth Children's Fund to the Health and Human Services Department's Summer Promise account for the continuation and expansion of the Summer Baby program.
All right, I don't see Mr. Kress here, but this is a grant with no match required. Does anyone have any questions? Councilor Strezzo?
Thank you, Mr. President. Does this, with the continuation, the verbiage on this, does that mean that it may not continue if the this grant is not accepted? If the Summer Baby program, will it continue either way?
Is there anyone from the city here to answer these questions? Ms. Weber, are you here? Ms. Connor, how about you? Can you speak on this?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the question. I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out and get back to you within this meeting. I'm sorry for the delay.
Yes, through you, Mr. President, to the chair. From what I understand, from what I've heard from Somerville parents, the summer baby program is very effective and helpful. So I would like to know, is there a threat of it not continuing on? Is there a funding issue? I would love to know some answers on this.
Okay, would you like to have these answers before we had a vote, I assume? Let's lay this item on the table and return to it until we get an answer.
Mr. President.
Oh, who's that? Council, is that Ms. Connor? Did somebody just speak?
It was me.
Oh, that was you. Sorry. All right, Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would recommend that we move approval of this and that Councilor Strezzo get the answers to her questions offline. This is a grant to with no match required to continue the summer baby program. I think these are good questions, but I think we should accept it.
Councilor Ewan Campen moves to approve the item. Any discussion? Councilor Strezzo.
Yes, thank you. No, I'm not trying to stall the acceptance of the grant, and I want to make that clear. I would like the questions answered, but no, I'm not going to. I don't want to hold back receiving a grant for the summer baby program. I think it's helpful, but I do think the question should be answered.
Definitely agree. But we do have a motion from Councilor Ewan Campen and discussion on that motion. Any further discussion?
Second it.
Second by Councilor Ballantyne. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President, this is a roll call vote on the approval of a grant $209,000 for the summer baby program. On that item, Councilor Klingon,
Yes.
Councilor Mba,
Yes.
Councilor White,
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne,
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo,
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang,
Yes.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Scott,
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen,
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of that item. That grant has been accepted.
Very good. Next item, please.
Returning to the regular order of business, we move to item number 4, which is a resolution submitted by Councilor Mba that this council and the administration work together to consider replacing the Bunker Hill Day holiday with the Juneteenth holiday and consult with any collective bargaining units that have Bunker Hill Day as a holiday.
Councilor Ba.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the recognition. I think we will all agree that, this is an unprecedented moment in American history for Black lives. And Juneteenth is the anniversary of the day when the last enslaved people were freed. And it's been celebrated for over 150 years. But for Black and brown lives, it's always been a long.
Oh, Councilor Ba, you froze. Are you still there? Councilor Ba is frozen. In the meantime, Councilor Davis, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'd love to hear the rest of Councilor Ba's statement on this if we can get it back, but I was going to suggest that, to provide my full support of this. I had actually raised this issue with School Committee Member Green, I think this is past week. He's back. All right, I would like to yield to Councilor Ba, please.
Okay, Councilor Strezzo, Ballantyne, and Davis would all like to sign on. Councilor Ba, you have the floor again, then Councilor White.
Yes, Mr. President, so I don't think, I may have lost connection, but I don't know where, I don't know which part, I think if I said that this is a symbolic, I don't know if I'm repeating myself here, but I said this is a symbolic step in the right direction for Black people in this country, and somehow we can lead that effort for the rest of the nation.
Any further discussion? The whole council apparently would like to sign on. Before that, I would like to comment on this just because this is kind of a pet issue of mine. I definitely support the idea of having a holiday for Juneteenth. I supported our state rep Barber's effort to make it a state holiday. But I also don't think we need to get rid of Bunker Hill Day in order to acknowledge Juneteenth. I'm a big supporter of having more holidays in general that recognize the very diverse history of the state and of this country. I love Bunker Hill Day because it's a day that recognizes a very local history that happened right down the street from where I live, where people fought to create this country that we have. And then we have another great holiday on Juneteenth where we advance the liberty of all people in this country. So I would say I am signing on to this. I love the concept. I would just say we can have two holidays. And one of the things, if I were king of the country, I would have a holiday twice a month and have them dovetail, and everybody would get a 4-day weekend at least once a month. We did that in the Army, and it really, that 1 4-day weekend a month really is a great relief on a lot of people. So I support this, but I also think I don't want to get rid of Bunker Hill Day either. And I see a lot of people hoping for me to be the king of America. Thank you very much, but we fought the Battle of Bunker Hill so that we didn't have kings. So this item will be laid on the table with the intention of approval. Councilor Davis.
I second your motion for a 4-day weekend every month.
There we go. Thank you very much. So this item will be laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Item number 5 is an order submitted by Councilor White that fines for code violations assessed pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 148A, for violations of the State Building Code and the State Fire Safety Code shall be subject to collection as a municipal charges lien pursuant to Chapter 252 of the Acts of 1996.
Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. Essentially, Chapter 252 of the Acts of 1996 allowed the City of Somerville to assess fines as liens on real estate when they are unpaid. But when the Board of Aldermen back then accepted it, basically the Board of Aldermen then stated that the Board of Aldermen at that time had to specifically approve the fines for which levies could be placed on real estate. So we had most things actually applicable. However, when we accepted Mass General Law, Chapter 148A for building code and fire code violations, that was not included. So especially now, and given the concerns that many residents have raised, we heard especially on Cedar Street, this is an important tool to give to the city, because otherwise, if the fines are unpaid, then the city has to go to district court to collect them, and many times judges are hesitant about awarding substantial monies. In this way, they can immediately be assessed as a lien, recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and then if the individual wants to sell a property, or maybe they'll have financing concerns, then they'll have to pay them. So this is another step I'm trying to take to give some more teeth to our Inspectional Services Division. And I did confer with Assistant City Solicitor Shapiro on this, so we sort of drafted it together. So I guess it could go to legislative matters, but you know, with the Assistant City Solicitor's participation, hopefully it could, you know, get sort of up on the top of the list, because it seems pretty straightforward, and I'd like to have the city have this ability to assess liens, you know, as soon as possible.
This looks like another great idea the entire city council would like to sign on to. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, the item is laid on the table and referred to the Legislative Matters Committee.
Mr. Chair, can I please?
Councilor Scott.
I'd just like to ask to sign on.
Yes, the whole council signed on. Item 5, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, unless anyone objects, the entire council will sign on to item number 5. And we also have Ms. Weber here to answer the question about summer babies. Seeing no objection to allowing her to speak, Ms. Weber, you have the floor?
Thank you. Cushman Weber from the mayor's office. Through the chair, I have learned that the city has enough funds to continue Summer Baby through the end of this July if the grant is not accepted, but would need the grant to continue it beyond July. Some of the funds are available through the COVID-19 funds that can be carried over, but beyond July, we would need the grant in order to continue the program.
All right, Councilor Strezzo, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Ms. Weber. So again, how long would this grant, if accepted, carry on the Summer Baby program to?
Apologies, through the chair. I don't have that. I don't have that answer. Director Kress is dealing with a family emergency at the moment, so I'm doing my best to get those answers. But I can follow up with you.
Okay, so if the funds are not accepted, the end of July, the program would have no funds left of this year, and it will permit the program to continue on. From what I understand.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, if you could possibly give more details to that offline, I'd really appreciate it, about the continuity of the Summer Baby program. Thank you. And
certainly, thank you.
Right on the item, Councilor Scott. Oh, were you done, Councilor Strezzo?
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. Just to my colleague at large and to folks who are looking home, these grants that fund positions and services in departments, sometimes that are much beloved and much needed, are dependent upon continuing to receive and accept these grants. That's why some of these, like this one, that are multi-year grants are especially useful for cities, because we can hire a person and count on a continuity of the program. But I think Councilor Strezzo is highlighting an important point, which is that if these grants go away without general fund support, these programs can evaporate, which is why it is an important step to include funds that we consider to be, or functions that we consider to be essential to the city's operation in the general fund, as opposed to counting on a temporary grant. So this is one of those points that we discuss in Finance Committee, and I appreciate Councilor Strezzo for highlighting it tonight. Thank you.
Hearing no further discussion, next item, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 6 is an order submitted by Councilor Ewan Campen that the city solicitor explain in writing prior to July 1 how Chapter 589 of the Acts of 1987, which is an act relative to dispute resolution, can provide this council with the ability to modify or reject components of collective bargaining agreements that have reached an impasse and entered arbitration.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Mr. President. So last week, the Boston Globe ran a series of editorials focused on the issues that many people have been focusing on around policing and budget negotiations and union contracts. And in one of their editorials on June 22nd, this was called "Start Holding the Line on Police Overtime." There was a portion of this that was news to me. Towards the end of the editorial, I'm going to quote it. They say, as for current complaints about Boston police overtime from members of the city council, they can and should be the last line of defense against overly generous union agreements, a responsibility they've dodged in the past. City councilors can vote not to fund them, and if they dislike the extravagant overtime pay and disciplinary process for officers that has been enshrined in past contracts, they should avoid rubber stamping them next time. In the event of an impasse, if contracts end up in arbitration, they can vote, the city council can vote to reject the results. In 1987, the state legislature granted the power to appropriating bodies such as city councils to reject or modify arbitration awards to police and firefighters. So that's the end of the quote. This was news to me. I, like many members of the public and municipal bodies around the country, I'm learning a lot over the last couple of weeks, and I would like more information about what the role of an appropriating body such as us on the city council is, not just to, you know, vote down a monetary component of a union settlement, but also to, quote, reject or modify arbitration awards. I would love more information on that in writing from the city solicitor so that it can inform this year's budget process. Thank you.
Councilor Ballantyne and Klingon would like to sign on, and Councilor Scott, you have a comment?
I do, sir. This is enormously important. It cannot be overstated how important Chapter 589 is in terms of labor relations. It is an enormously, it is a pivotal piece of state legislation. I am, again, incredibly grateful for my colleague for bringing it up. And one of the reasons why I love being on this team, because my fellow legislators constantly are picking up the ball and pushing it forward. I would, Mr. Chair, I would love to see this passed into a committee so that we can really dive into it. There are efforts statewide considering modifications to Chapter 589. I share the desire to find out what is possible under the existing statute and to find out the limitations of it, to see what needs to be pushed for change. So thank you very much to Councilor Ewan-Campen for bringing this forward, and I would appreciate having this approved and sent to committee.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, could I please sign on?
Councilor Zeddy would like to sign on. Any further discussion?
I'd like to sign on as well, Mr. President. Councilor Davis.
The whole council would like to sign on. Hearing no further discussion, the sign on will be laid on the table and we'll refer it to the Finance Committee. Next item.
Item number 7 is an order submitted by Councilor Niedergang that this council consider the joint recommendations of the Bicycle Advisory Committee and the Pedestrian and Transit Advisory Committee with respect to a transportation response to COVID-19.
Councilor Niedergang.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like this to go to the Traffic and Parking Committee for discussion and consideration.
Councilor Ballantyne would like to sign on. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, the item is laid on the table and referred to the Traffic Committee. And Councilor Barr would like to sign on. And Klingon. Next item.
Number 8 is it.
Sign on to every item. We'll save some time. No.
Item 8 is it. We ready?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Clerk.
Item 8 is an order submitted by Councilor Niedergang that the Chief of Police report to this council no later than June 26th the patrol car deployment schedule, including the number of patrol cars deployed hourly on weekdays, weekends, and holidays.
Councilor Niedergang.
Thank you, Mr. President. This item and the 4 subsequent items through item 12 are all requests for information from the police department. And I'm happy to waive the readings of the next 4 if that makes sense, or take these up any way that you feel is appropriate or that councilors want to. But just a couple of notes. All of these items, except the last one, except item 12, are directly related, in my opinion, to the police budget. I did send all of these to Chief Fallon on Monday. I emailed them. 2 of these were submitted in the June 11th meeting, items 11 and 12. So these are from 2 weeks ago. The others and these other old ones, all 5 of them, I sent to Chief Fallon on Monday via email and copied Mr. Mastroboni and the mayor's office, and then sent again on Wednesday. And Ms. Connor did respond, I think, to all of us and said that this is, these 5 are part of, there's something like 16 different requests for information from the police department, and that they're they're working on them as best they can and hoping to get us responses by tomorrow, which I'm grateful for, and I understand that this is a lot of work. So I no need to belabor these. These are, detailed questions about deployments and staffing that are relevant to the amount of money that goes into the police department budget, primarily for personnel. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Councilor Strezzo would like to sign on to item number 7, and we will lay this item on the table, and Councilor Needham would like to waive the readings from items 10, 11, and 12, and we will lay those on the table. And do you want them referred to the Finance Committee, or would you just like them approved, Councilor Needham?
Just approved, and also you can waive the reading of item 9 as well.
Okay, I think we just read 9, right? Oh, no, we're on 8. Councilor Needham moves to waive the readings of items 9 through 12 and lay them on the table for approval. The items are laid on the table. Next item, please.
Mr. President?
Councilor Valentine.
Thank you. I'd like to move to take my late item out of order, please.
Councilor Valentine moves to take a light item out of order. Is there any objection? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, please read the late item.
The late item, Mr. President, is an order submitted by Councilor Ballantyne that the police department post their weekly crime log on social media on a weekly basis.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. I think it's important in terms of transparency that we hear what the crime log is or see it on social media. I thought at one time, a few years ago, that the crime log in the local paper showed or a majority of the crime, but I realized that it was a pick and choose. And I think based on everything that's going on, I think it should be fully transparent in a medium, a communication medium that tends to be used by most people. Cambridge does this, Boston does this. So I think that it's a good idea for transparency to have Somerville do this also. Thank you.
And I also remember when they would put it into the on the newspapers. It was a nice high school reunion for me at times. So Councilor Davis would like to sign on. Yes, just Councilor Davis would like to sign on, and Councilor Klingon has a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the good counselor from Ward 7. I understand that the crime logs have oftentimes been posted in the local newspapers and so on. Would this be just arrests, or would this be like calls into the police altogether, or all of that, all of the above, like arrest, calls, and also, yeah.
Arrest, I thought that it should all be there. I'm happy to talk to the administration about it. I'm certainly happy to talk to you, but I think it's a good idea for people just to understand what is out there. What I've also noticed that the most vulnerable communities for crime in the city are wards 1, 4, and 7. And I just think from a transparency, it doesn't hurt to get it all out there. We could decide, going forward whether it's a little too much information or if it's should be organized differently. But I was thinking of everything.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I would like to sign on to this. The reason I was asking, because I also think it's a better illustration just outside of just arrests to put all the different calls, except if it's going to identify like sort of houses that may have some issues and so on. But so you're right, we can have that discussion later, but I think this is a good idea. I would like to sign on. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, this item is laid on the table for approval.
Mr. President, item number 13 is a communication submitted by Councilor Rossetti, which is a report of the High School Building Committee, which met on June 15th.
Councilor Rossetti.
Thank you, sir. I did want to report some information from that meeting. We learned that the tradespersons were averaging 300 workers for the month of June. It really should be at 400 workers. So they were working their way, the crew, the leaders of this project are working their way towards getting to the 400 number, which would impact the timeline. We do need more workers besides what was working as of the meeting of June 15th. There's a lot of construction going on statewide, which is some of the impact for the shortage of laborers. Some have fear of COVID, etc. They are still doing daily temperature screening for all of everybody who arrives at the site every morning. The timeline now for the completion of the project is still an unknown. Suffolk, the awardee of the construction, did present to PMA and SMMA, our architect and team on this, their projected end dates, but they were at the time of our meeting of June 15th still being debated by PMA and SMMA with Suffolk. They weren't in agreement with the dates that Suffolk had presented. The committee did not see those dates. We will be seeing those at our next meeting. The next meeting also, we held discussion about whether or not to continue the rental of the modulars in front of the high school building. The cost of the modulars right now are in the low $20,000 per month range. There was suggestion that we should carry the contract longer. Superintendent Skippers noted that she may need the use of the modulars for additional COVID space for education. At the time of the meeting, it was an unknown what the Commissioner of Education was going to lay out for the fall. We learned today that press release did come out. We talked a lot about our contingency line, which is the backup money that any project has for the unknowns that may arise in any project. Our contingency started at over $12 million, and I want to report to you all that at the time of the meeting, it was down to $123,145.38. A reason that it went down so deeply from our previous meeting is due to the fact of the Central Hill campus plan. That budget, that part of the project was going to be done by the city. We learned recently through our finance meeting that that is not going to happen that way right now. So the landscaping of Central Hill will now go back to the high school project. There is some pavers that need to be put in, ADA compliance issues. So that pretty much depleted our contingency line. So we then talked about needing to lobby the state delegation. The CARES Act and the COVID costs that all localities have been under, and we know Somerville, we received the monthly meetings or the weekly meetings through Councilor Davis's Public Health and Public Safety Committee. We get reports, and we know that Somerville qualified for, through the CARES Act, I believe it was $7.1 million. That money doesn't, the administration is not projecting to use any of that towards the relief for the high school project because there are so many other critical areas of need for that money in our city. So what we did learn, Mr. Rich Ray shared with the committee the fact that, as we all know, the governor received the funding through the federal government. Boston and area of the Cape, who had greater than, I think, 500,000 residents, they qualified to get the money directly from the federal government. The governor of Massachusetts received the total bulk of the rest of the monies. Of that total bulk, 25% was distributed to the local communities based on the governor's formula, and I said Somerville got 7.1. So the governor has 75% of the funding. What will he be doing with it? Well, our project manager called the School Building Assistance Authority multiple times, has had meetings, and concerned over the unforeseen COVID costs that came in for the relief for this project. Right now, you'll see attached to my report this evening is a communication I sent to Governor Baker 2 days ago. I apologize for not sharing this with you, but we didn't have a meeting. This was critical. It needed to get on the governor's desk right away. So I want to commend and thank Rich Raish for working with me on this. I held a conference call. Thank you, Senator Pat Jalen and Matt Hartman, her staff. We had a lengthy conference call going into great detail about what this needed to happen for Somerville. My letter asks that the governor, with some of that money, of the 75%, he is still working on with the House and Senate as we speak today about what to potentially do with some of that money. I ask in that letter that he put a budget to the School Building Assistance Authority, not to give Somerville and other communities who are in the middle of their school rebuild projects and have this unforeseen costly thing happen to them. Instead, under the leadership of Treasurer Goldberg, who oversees the School Building Assistance Authority program, give them a budget. So then Somerville and every other community who's doing a renovation or a build up of a school and in the middle of it right now, every one of us have reached out to the School Building Assistance Authority for assistance and help. And the answer we all received from them was, can't help you. No, we don't have any money for it. You're on your own. So therefore, we talked about in the building committee meeting how important it was to lobby the governor and lobby him right away. Chairman Parentozzi asked me to take it on as a member of the school council, the city council. So I did. As I said, I've been working with Rich Raish and others. I want to thank Ms. Weber for helping me get that letter out on Tuesday, and Clerk Long as well. I did also call and speak directly with every single one of our representatives, Mr. Conley, Ms. Barber, Ms. Provost, and explained to them what this letter really meant. Unfortunately, the House, it was too late for them to put in any amendments. They had I think less than 24-hour notice from the governor that they were going to be looking at bills about the funding. And it was too late for the House to put in an amendment with my letter that received to them on Tuesday, but it wasn't too late for the senator to help us. She didn't make any promises. She's working on it. I shared with her other communities that I know have in fact sent letters. I then reached out to the Mass Association of School Committees executive director, sent him my letter, asked him to share it with all school committees statewide, strongly encouraging all the school committees who have projects underway to use my letter as the template, change it, put their numbers in it. My letter shows Somerville numbers, which is right now at $250,000 that we've used towards COVID costs and rising. I'm hoping that other school districts are doing the same that I had done, and I'm waiting on the answer. I haven't heard a word since. I did hear from Ms. Barber, who is working with Senator Jalen. Rep. Conley and Rep. Provo were very grateful to me for calling and explaining to them. Hopefully, maybe we'll get something out of it. I don't know. I haven't heard back. I'm sorry that I'm rambling this much, but this is getting a very critical time right now for this project. Our next meeting will be July 13th. Mr. Bean couldn't be at this meeting that I'm reporting out now because, of course, he was extremely busy with the crunch of budget. So I explained to the committee I didn't know if Mr. Bean would also still be critically busy on our building committee meeting of July 13th. In the event that he was, I requested that we have a second meeting in July on July 27th. The building committee marked their calendars for a possible second meeting the month of July, where we can continue to closely watch these finance numbers and the criticalness of the budget. Thank you for your patience, Mr. President, in allowing me to speak this long, but it's a really, really important time for us right now.
Any discussion on the item? Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I just want to offer my sincere thanks to Councilor Rossetti, not just for this report, but for all the work she's doing behind the scenes. You know, the people of Somerville, thank you for it. This is an incredibly important project, and your advocacy and attention to detail on this is incredibly appreciated. Thank you.
Here, here.
Through you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to say pretty much the exact same thing. What an incredible advocate we have in Councilor Petty. Thank you so much for your work on that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, this item will be laid on the table and placed on file. And Councilor Ballantyne would like her late order referred to the Public Health and Safety Committee. Next item, please.
Item number 14 is a resolution submitted by Councilor Scott supporting House Resolution 702, which is the People's Justice Guarantee.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. As my colleagues all know, this has been laid on the table for a long time as we've been preoccupied by COVID. But as we have been overtaken as a nation by important discussions about policing, about the carceral state, about the state of our criminal justice system, I just want to highlight that this is still on our desk. And this is a resolution which is, it's not too long, but it's an important read, House Resolution 702. Because it speaks directly to many of the items that we are discussing right now, that we are generating and throwing into committee. It calls for the elimination of qualified immunity. It calls for the elimination of militarization. It calls for the creation of non-violent, non-police first responder networks. It calls for basically everything we've said, civilian oversight review boards and the funding to make sure that they are strong and that they are functional. I, in fact, cannot find a single measure that this city council has put forward in response to this current moment and this longstanding structural problem that isn't referenced in this document. So rather than just continue to leave this on the table, I wanted to take this opportunity to say, I know we're all buried in budget season. I know we're all working in a lot of different places. I'd just like to implore my colleagues to please, if you haven't already, read House Resolution 702. And if anybody would like to work on creating the flowery whereases and the important resolves that can express our support of this, I would gratefully accept that, because I think it's important to do so. But I think even without that, having read this and over again been impressed by how much back in November of 2019, ahead of the fires in this country, Representative Presley was on board and was ahead and was leading the way on this and was leaning on the work of people of color in this country for decades. These solutions are here. They've already been proposed. So I'm not going to necessarily move for approval tonight, Mr. President, because it is just right now a simple resolution saying we support it. But I would love to have my colleagues support. If there's desire to work on language for this, I'd like to do that somehow in the minutes we have between Finance Committee meetings, or just simply to ask for approval on this.
Well, depending on the pleasure of this council, I mean, I would support approving it tonight. And I see Councilor Ballantyne would like to sign on. But if there's no motion, then we will just leave it laid on the table. Do I hear any motions on this item? Hearing no motions, we'll keep this one laid on the table for the time being. And Councilor, well, let's not all sign on to it if we're not going to vote on it tonight. Well, I guess you guys want to sign on to it. So Councilor Clingan and Councilor Davis. All right. This item is laid on the table with no vote taken tonight. Next item.
Item number 15 is a grant location that was submitted by Eversource for 43 feet of conduit in Murdoch Street.
Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to waive the readings of items 15, 16, and 17, and assuming from the city clerk that we received no one opposed to this comments, then I would move to approve them this evening.
Yes, Mr. President, I received no comments.
All right, Councilor White would like to waive the readings of the previous items and move for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's take all these items up in the previous items and we'll do a roll call vote for everything.
Very good. Mr. President, this is a roll call vote on the approval of items 3, 4, 6 through 12, Councilor Ballantyne's late item, and items 15, 16, and 17, and placing Councilor Rossetti's report on file. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of that motion. It has been approved.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Next item is item number 18, which is a resolution submitted by Councilors Mba, McLaughlin, Klingon, Strezzo, Ewan Campen, Ballantyne, and Scott, that this council supports the Just Us Somerville organization of local residents of color and considers their demands regarding policing.
All right, so these, the demands have not been made public yet, but I feel comfortable supporting consideration for this. Do we have any motion to approve, or would people prefer to lay this one on the table for a previous time?
Move to approve, sir.
All right, Councilor Scott moves to approve, and we'll take that, we'll lay that on the item to lay that on the table and take it up for a vote later. Councilor White would like to sign on, and Councilor Davis, which item did you want to sign on to?
This item, Mr. President.
This item. All right, the whole council would like to sign on, and Councilor Barr, did you have a comment?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you. I had already commented about it at the last council meeting. So thank you for the opportunity again.
Okay, great. So this item will be laid on the table for approval tonight. Next item.
Item number 19 is a resolution submitted by Councilor Ballantyne that the mayor, the chief of police, the director of health and human services discussed with this council at this last meeting their declaration of systemic racism as a public safety and health emergency.
So the mayor is not able to make it to the meeting tonight, and I think we're planning on having him present for July 9th. Does anyone have any comments on this item before I just keep it laid on the table? Hearing no discussion, this item will lay on the table with no vote taken. Next item.
Mr. President, that brings us to item number 20, which is a report of Committee on Finance, which met on June 16th.
Councilor Scott. And Mr. Clerk, let's read the next item as well. Or any finance
Certainly.
committee. Them all.
All right.
Councilor
Very
Scott
good.
moves to waive the reading of items number to number 24 and take all the finance items up right now. Councilor Scott, you have the floor for all your finance.
Thank you. This is a little different than most finance seasons because customarily these are committees of the whole, and we have not been doing it this way, so I will briefly describe the action each evening. I know that many of you have been watching these meetings from the audience, and I know everybody in the city appreciates that. The meeting of June 16th was the first one here. This was part of our pre-deliberation before we had received the general fund. There was a great deal of discussion, which is currently moot, related to the need for a 1/12 budget. But we also spent considerable time discussing the water and sewer enterprise fund budgets. We had some training at this meeting also on the system that allows us to review the budgets, which now everybody's very familiar with. And the conversation mostly was related to the impact of these rate hikes on ratepayers, the the status of our water and sewer retained earning funds, as well as our joint stabilization fund for both water and sewer. The general, summarizing multiple nights of conversation about this, the general disposition of the committee was a profound displeasure that the home rule petition granting the city authority to implement a residential exemption has not been pursued by the administration, despite being approved at the State House. So there was extensive discussion and no action was taken on that night. Other than that, the expenditure limitations for departmental revolving funds were recommended for approval that evening. On 18th, the committee met again, this time to continue discussing different transfers and mostly transfers. So this is the nuts and bolts of moving around funds at the end of the year to cover expenses. Not much that was controversial was there. Multiple items were recommended for approval, including a transfer of $500,000 from the engineering capital outlay repairs account to the street reconstruction and resurfacing stabilization fund. Basically, it's money that we had planned to use on street repairs that didn't happen because of COVID-19. So we're just throwing that into a stabilization fund, so we'll be able to use those funds next year to do the same thing. There was also discussion about various contracts, contract extensions, minor transfers and invoices. One piece that did get a special scrutiny from Councilor Rossetti was about unpaid towing invoices for DPW. The request was made for information. This item is discharged with no recommendation because Councilor Rossetti wanted to ensure that all of the vehicles being towed were city vehicles, that we weren't doing tows on the city's tab for private vehicles. We have been provided since then with the information that documents that all of the vehicles towed were city vehicles. So unless Councilor Rossetti objects, I would ask, after accepting these committee reports, that item 210271 also be approved. We can take that up separately as a separate motion after accepting the committee reports.
On that point, Mr. President?
You yield, Councilor Scott?
Absolutely.
Councilor Rossetti?
Thank you, sir. Through you to the Chair of Finance. Yes, I agree with you. The response we received from the Commissioner did meet my my needs for being certain. So I am comfortable with approving that, however, which way we need to go about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Scott, please continue.
All right. Most of the other items discussed were simple transfers. There was a great deal of conversation about repurposing CPA funds, a request by the administration and the committee to repurpose CPA funds for the Central Hill campus. That conversation really got into the weeds about where money comes from and what purposes it can be used for. Councilor White asked for a motion moved and accepted and was accepted by the committee, asking that Director Bean address the Finance Committee on the bonding status of the $4.32 million appropriation and whether that amount should be reduced based on how this money is being slid around. So I don't believe he's addressed us on that point yet. So that item hopefully will receive its own number and be coming back to committee. Outside of that, I don't believe there were any controversial items that evening. Most items were kept in committee. Some are marked for approval. That takes us to Monday, 6/22, where the City Council met, where the City Council's Finance Committee met as a committee. Once again, all members present. This was a 5-hour meeting. There were reviews of the revenues line, actually a very extensive discussion of the revenue estimates of the city. There were discussions of inspectional services, elections, city council, clerk committees, city clerk, licensing commission, treasury, various non-departmental budgets, insurance, and also the fire department. Things to highlight, although I recommend, I know not everybody has 5 hours. The ISD discussion had a lot of talk about, well, the revenue discussion had some things that touched on ISD, particularly the new fee for a safety review plan, a review of safety plan. It's being proposed to be set at $3.50 per $1,000 cost of construction. It was represented that this is relatively low. There would also be a $100 per application fee in addition to that, just as a minimum charge. The determination has not been set by the director yet about whether or not that would be applied to emergency projects, like if somebody's house caught on fire. What's important about this, though, is that while this does not have to be approved by the city council, this is within the director of ISD's authority to set this fee and to impose it. Councilor White had some very direct questioning on it and wanted to ensure that the staff was in place to actually implement these reviews, because otherwise we run the risk of this becoming a tax instead of a fee for services. Councilor Rossetti also expressed some extreme reservations about it, given the high cost of permitting in the city of Somerville. With that said, the rest of the discussion around inspectional services highlighted that our internal health inspector positions, the ones that would go around and inspect restaurants, are basically being eliminated, changed. They're vacant currently, and those functions are being served by an outsourced contract. Those positions instead are being converted to the safety inspectors that would handle these safety review plans, as well as other safety reviews in the city, basically adding extra inspector bodies for both COVID-related and non-COVID related safety review plans. So there's some concern about the outsourcing of these health positions. There was also a great deal of discussion about the extermination line and RAP programs in the city. I think some of which, there's the output of some of which are some supplemental orders we had this evening. We discussed elections with Commissioner Salerno. Short version, it's going to be a hell of a year. Hopefully we'll be able to direct some of the CARES Act funds to offset some of the enormous costs that are going to change. Right now, his budget doesn't reflect the increased costs of conducting a presidential election in a COVID world. The committee had concern, but it is our hope that we can use some of that money for those purposes. City council budget was discussed briefly. It seems that nobody asked the city council about modifications to our budget this year, despite the multiple requests that are outstanding by the city council for additional resources, most specifically outside counsel and attorney. But apparently nobody consulted with the city council about this budget. Councilor Rossetti, in the spirit of mutual belt tightening, made a motion to reduce line item 571001, which is our in-state conferences line, down to $1 to return close to $1,200 to the city to help get through this as part of our giving back. There was also a lot of discussion about other places where the city council could give back. But I wanted to highlight this because it is a motion that has been made and it was tabled. This is part of the flow that we had discussed, which is the Finance Committee. We intend to entertain motions on department budgets and then bring and leave those items on the table so that they are on the end of every report. And then when we do reconvene as a committee of the whole, that's when those actually can serve as bookmarks for potential changes so that we can discuss them as committee of the whole. And of course, at any point in the committee of the whole, other councilors' motions can be entertained. Outside of that, there was also discussion of the Treasury Department, which is down a position just because of bad timing. But aside from that vacant position, also was understaffed because of various medical leaves and I think a grand jury duty. What was highlighted to the committee is that while we are keeping a lot of positions open and only partially funding them for half a year or a quarter of a year, that's really just landing on the departments that happen to have vacant positions when we entered this COVID time period and hit this hiring freeze. Treasury is also currently having some staffing issues just because of not just vacancies. So we're making notes about what shortfalls would need to be added to those budgets in order to make those positions whole. Outside of that, there was some discussion about the fire department. There are 2 current vacancies for firefighter, but it's going to be a while till we fill those because an entrance exam date has not been scheduled. There was an entrance exam. It was postponed due to COVID. We're still waiting to see when we can get that test taken and hopefully get some new firefighters here in Somerville. With that, I'll move on to the night of the 23rd. The night of the 23rd, we had a discussion. We had a review of the school department budget. Today, now, less than 36 hours later, we received the state guidance. So I anticipate we will be revisiting this school budget. It was anticipated that we would be revisiting it in our meetings of the whole, and we requested that the superintendent be present and on July 7th or 8th for both of those nights so that we can have further discussion based on the state guidance, which was anticipated and has now been received. There was a lot of good conversation there about what's currently in that budget, but I'm not going to belabor the point. There was also reviews of infrastructure and asset management. There are, again, it's a department that is currently down 1 position and has multiple other positions in the program improvement requests that could be staffed, but because of our current situation, all that staffing increase requests were basically shelved. I'm not going to get into the weeds about all of that, but we did revisit the sewer and water enterprise funds and discussion of rates. After some conversation with the committee and Councilor White explaining his concerns, it was moved to accept the rate recommendations and the separate sewer and water enterprise funds. The reason we're considering approving the sewer and water enterprise funds is, unlike our general fund, those are separate funds and we can approve them for a full year and not require the city to go through the effort of creating a 1/10 budget for that, since nothing substantial is anticipated to change from the water and sewer standpoint. So the sewer enterprise, water enterprise fund are both recommended for approval out of committee that evening, as well as an appropriation of close to $700,000 from the retained earnings account to fund the water enterprise budget deficit for this year. The rates being moved for approval are a 7.5% increase on water and a 2.5% increase on sewer. These have been previously discussed in front of the entire council and the finance committee. There was a roll call vote taken on that item. It was approved 4-1 with Councilor Mba in the negative. And then our final report is last night, June 24th. It was a committee of the whole having a public hearing regarding the FY21 budget. I want to congratulate everybody on their stamina, not just for last night, but also for this overly long report. In short, there were 151 speakers, the vast majority concerned with the police budget, but also touching on items such as housing stability, school counselors, social workers, paraprofessionals, transportation department, engineering department, streets, climate change, and many other community health and welfare programs. There were some enormously moving stories told by members of the community, great bravery demonstrated by people coming forward to share their stories, and I'm enormously grateful to everybody involved. Of the 151 residents speaking at the public hearing, there were 3 who expressed opposition to decreases in the Somerville Police Department budget, and somewhere around 138 expressing a desire for explicit defunding, and some number between 60% and 10% of the Somerville Police Department budget. With that, I would like to ask that these committee reports be accepted as submitted. I would also ask that item 210, oh Lord, now I've lost it.
210319, the paraprofessionals.
I was saying 210271. 210271 is being discharged without recommendation, and I would ask that we act on that this evening. And then separately, I can make a motion to discharge 210319 separately.
Very good. So Councilor Scott moves to approve Councilor Scott moves to approve the committee reports as submitted. Any discussion on these committee reports? Before we go, Mr. Clerk, stupid question I just want to be sure of. If items are tabled in the committee report, such as proposed cuts to budgets, that would not take effect tonight, correct?
That's correct, Mr. President. Those items remain in committee.
Okay, very good. Let's do a roll call vote on the committee reports then.
Mr. President, this would be a roll call vote then. Actually, if you want, we can pick up item number 18, which was the Just Us Somerville resolution, as well as the 5 finance committee reports, as well as item number 210271, which is the prior year DPW invoices, as well as the discharge of item number 210319 from the finance committee.
What would I do without you, Mr. Clerk? Yes, please, call the roll.
On all those items, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes, Mr. Clerk, you're the best.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Davis.
I'm here. I just had to click the button 4 times to get into it. Yes.
Okay. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti. Councilor Rossetti. And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, 10 councilors have voted in favor of those items and 1 is absent. That motion has been approved.
All right, before we move to the discharge items, Councilor Barr would like to be recorded as a yes on the previous roll call vote. He had a computer issue, and now Councilor Scott, you have an item you'd like to discharge? And Councilor Rossetti would like to be recorded as a yes for this vote. And Councilor
Very
Scott?
good, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I believe those discharge items were taken up in that vote, sir. That's 210319 and the item that was discharged without recommendation. I don't think we need any further action.
There we go. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Well, actually, Mr. President, I'm sorry to report that there's a couple of items that still require roll call votes. Item 210319 has been discharged from committee and is now before the City Council. That is the appropriation of $1.5 million from the unreserved fund balance to the Salary and Wage Stabilization Fund. And because this is a stabilization fund, that requires a roll call vote for approval.
Very good. Any discussion on approval? No one's going to say anything. I am ecstatic to take this vote, and that's all I will say. Please call the roll.
On the approval of that appropriation, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne,
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo,
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang,
Yes.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Scott,
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen, Councilor Ewan Campen,
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors in favor. That appropriation has been approved.
Very good.
Now,
Now, go ahead, Mr. Clerk.
Now, there is one more stabilization fund appropriation that came out of the Finance Committee report, and that was the appropriation of $500,000 to the Street Reconstruction and Resurfacing Stabilization Fund for street repairs. That was item number 210265, and that came out of, I believe, the June 18th Finance Committee meeting. So on the approval of that appropriation, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Again, Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor. That appropriation has been approved.
Very good. Now we're ready to move on.
Now we are ready to move on to item number 25, which is Report Committee on Legislative Matters, which met on June 18th.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee on Legislative Matters did meet on June 18th. All members were present. There were a number of items before us, most notably 3 items that came out of the prior City Council meeting relating to the police department and reforms. We took these up together. The discussion was kicked off by a statement by Ms. Tracy Pratt, who was there representing Just Us Somerville. She's also a Somerville resident and a member of the community of color in Somerville. She spoke to us about the concerns of the community generally as it relates to policing, as a subject that we've heard about quite a bit, as Councillor Scott just recounted in his report on the Committee on Finance. And the specific items that were before the committee were an item to codify a use of force policy, an item to codify and create a civilian review commission, and also an item to create an ordinance addressing racial profiling. Quite clearly, these are all things that won't, even taken together, fix the problem that we've heard from about from so many people, including from Ms. Pratt. But they were specifically referenced in the first list of items that Just Us Somerville posted a few weeks back as things that they wanted to see the city do. In fact, it was after listening first to the voices of the community. The second item was to create a civilian review commission to address things, including the use of force policy. So I felt it was important to have these on the agenda in our very next meeting and to lead off indeed with voices from the community. There were a few other folks that were slated to speak as well. They weren't able to make it, but we were very happy to have Ms. Pratt with us that evening, and her testimony was really quite compelling. So as far as the process goes, the Civilian Review Commission item specifically, this was something that in the mayor's press release, and in fact in the budget, as a few folks noted last night, there's money for a consultant to come in and work with the community to set up the system, to determine a process, to have a civilian review commission. My feeling, as is consistent with what some folks expressed last night, is that's too many steps before we get to anything. This is a legislative process, and it's my intent to move forward with this because these are, as I said, things that we are being asked to do by folks of color in the city, and it strikes me as a good thing to do, whether or not all of the other changes that are being discussed, including issues relating to defunding or reimagining the police department come to pass, which I hope they will. In the meantime, we can do whatever we can to make the current and any future concept of policing better and more reflective of the community and more answerable to the community, specifically through civilian commission. So that was the idea, and we had a brief discussion about the process going forward. My hope is to bring in more folks to speak to us so that we can listen. We've been in touch with a number of folks around the country who have experience and expertise in this, including a woman who actually sits on the Oakland Review Commission. So my hope is that in future meetings, say this maybe in this meeting, my hope is for that future meetings we'll have more folks to come in, more folks from the Somerville community as well as beyond. We also talked about potentially having a process for communication outside of the committee meeting process. Obviously, there is a public hearing structure that we could leverage if we feel that's appropriate. But we also talked about perhaps having meetings outside of a committee meeting where there wouldn't be a meeting of the Committee on Legislative Matters or the City Council for that matter, but something that is an opportunity for us to sit back and listen specifically to people who are most directly impacted by policing in the city, and really get a feel for, generally speaking, and specifically out to these three proposals before us, what we need to do. My thought that I expressed was that this is a many months long process. My research and from what I've been told from others is that when these civilian review commissions are done poorly, it's primarily because they don't have the right power. They're sort of there for show rather than actually having power and authority and subpoena power and independent counsel and all of those things, but also because they're done too quickly and they're rushed, communities rush into them. So that is certainly not my intent. I don't intend it to be 2 years before we have one. I certainly hope that's not the case, but we will continue to be led by voices in the community through this process, and that's my intent. So that was the intent that was expressed from the committee for the most part as well. So that's those three items. We also did talk about a few other things that are important to note because we have a few ordinances before us this evening. I do want to note that we did continue the discussion on requiring pollution mitigation for new construction near roadways, highways. Mr. Deshpande from the Office of Sustainability and Environment is going to do some research for us. We've had a good conversation about what we're looking for, working with the Board of Health to put something in place. And so we look forward to hearing back from him. And we thank both him and Mr. Salas Garcia very much for their input and their help on that. And then we have an ordinance that will, that we will sever from this report at the end and replace it with the final ordinance that is provided to change the way that the clerk of committees are assigned. This was a home rule petition that was sent to Beacon Hill a year or so ago, was approved. We came back with making tweaks in the language. Essentially, the way it works before was that the mayor would appoint the clerk of committees and assistant clerks, and subject to approval by the city council. But as we just discussed in the finance committee the other night, the clerk of committees does report to, in a sense, the city council, and so this is an initiative that then President Valentine had undertaken to move this. So the changes are very straightforward. They basically take what we're used to say the mayor does this. We just sort of repeated that. It says the city council shall appoint to clerk of committees or assistant clerk. No other substantive changes. And then finally, we discussed an ordinance formally recognizing domestic partnerships. This had been in committee for several meetings, and we made one change in that we. I'm trying to find the right part of the report here. We made one change in that the draft originally required that folks who were applying to be recognized as domestic partners provide their address and report any change of address. It struck me that I don't have to do that if I move and if my wife and I move, or frankly, if I move and my wife doesn't, for that matter. And so we just struck that address requirement because it was originally there was a requirement that folks live in the same house to be recognized as domestic partners, and that struck us as inconsistent. So we deleted that part. This item was not a draft submitted before us. We have a separate item number 40 that is on the agenda, and after we approve the minutes and then take up the items, the items to make the change to clerk committees, which, forgive me, Mr. President, I neglected to jot down before I read this, so if the clerk could help me out before I finish this report. We'll have to take that one up separately. After we do that, I'd like to take item 40 out of order. It doesn't have to be separate because, as I said, our deliberation in committee was just a discussion. We didn't have the full draft proposal formally before us. But the draft proposal that is before us reflects what was amended in committee. I would like to propose further amendments to that I will express when we get to that point. So with that, I would like to sever sever item 210195 from the committee report, and following that, move that the report be approved as submitted, subject to the severing of that item.
All right, Councilor Scott moves to sever the item previously mentioned and move for approval of the committee report. Any discussion? Councilor Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank Councilor Davis for the enormous work, that you put in. I have so much faith in your capabilities and also your ability to take important issues and run with it. It's really appreciated. And also, I want to, apologize about like the racial profiling ordinance. I'm still going through over 2,000 emails. So I'm reviewing it, but I'm not done yet. So I haven't forgotten about, that, but thank you for all your work and effort. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Now let's have a roll call vote on approving the committee report.
It's a roll call vote on the approval on severing the Legislative Matters Committee report and approving the balance of the report except severing out item number 210195, was it, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, correct. Thank
Sorry.
You.
So on severing the report and approving the balance of the report, leaving item 210195 before this council. On that item, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor. The committee report has been approved, and except for item number 210195, which is the ordinance regarding the appointment of the clerks of committee, and that is now before this council.
Very good. Councilor Davis, you have an amendment to propose?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to take up item 41, which relates to the severed item, and move to replace the proposed amendment with the version proposed set forth in item 41.
Got that, Mr. Clerk?
I have that. We can roll that into the next roll call vote if you wish.
Thank you very much. This amendment will be laid on the table.
Mr.
Councilor
President,
Davis?
let's take up item 40 out of order, please.
Councilor Davis moves to take item number 40 out of order. Any discussion? Seeing none, please, Mr. Clerk, please read the order.
Item 40 is a communication from the Assistant City Solicitor submitting an ordinance to recognize domestic partnerships as recommended by the Legislative Matters Committee on June 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this item is, as I said, has been in committee for a few weeks. It was originally proposed by President McLaughlin. As I mentioned in the committee report, we made some changes. But I left it in committee for 2 weeks because I didn't know why then, and I know why now. Something didn't feel right, and I wanted to just, when I read the report 2 weeks ago, I said, I hope folks take a look at this and let me know if we're missing something here, because I just want to make sure we don't screw something up. And shame on me for not having seen very clearly what was missing here, but I now do. It was brought to my attention that this item, the ordinance as it is currently drafted, quite frankly, is contrary to arguments that I've made in sitting at the Horseshoe, going back to I think even my first year on the council, which is that I don't think it's the place of government to be telling people what is or is not a family. And that defining families is something that historically we've gotten quite wrong as a society, and we ought not continue to try and to undertake to do so. And specifically as it relates to this ordinance, there are places in this ordinance where the domestic partners are specifically, this domestic partnership means the entity formed by two persons who meet the following criteria and jointly file a registration statement proclaiming that. And as I have said in several other points, thinking back, the first point I believe was when we were talking about the no more than four concept in zoning, and I said, well, why should we be the ones that define what is and is not a family? And that's when governments try to do that, as I said, we've gotten it horribly wrong. So I would like to move to make several amendments to this ordinance as the proposed ordinance that's before us. They all relate to effectively just taking out the two-person part and just leaving it unstated. And if if the next question is, well, what happens if 20 people want to come and claim that they're domestic partners? I guess my answer would be, well, what if they do? I have no more reason to feel that that's an issue than two people, frankly, and I don't think either of it's an issue. So I would like to move to, I'll read through the changes, and then I will, of course, provide them to the clerk afterwards, either in list form, or if somebody wants to send me a Word version of the document, I'm happy to. So, Mr. President, I would like to move to amend the proposed ordinance before us as follows. To amend section, and actually, if we could the clerk bring the ordinance up on the screen? It'd be easier if
that will take a minute. Hang on. Why don't you continue, Councilor Davis? I'll try and bring it up as quickly as I can.
So it's item 40. It's the ordinance that's attached to that item in the agenda. As I said, it's fairly straightforward. This was, for folks, just as a reminder, this was prepared by the Solicitor's Office. It was based on ordinances in Cambridge and Boston that existed prior to marriage equality becoming the law of the Commonwealth and the ultimate law of the country. And so those versions were in place before that. Some of them did not have a domestic partnership ordinance. This is sort of a stripped down version of that, of those Cambridge and Boston ordinances to address this specific issue here. So the ordinance begins with a sort of a preamble, a general statement, then there's definitions. And in 6.89C, a domestic partnership is defined. And it reads, domestic partnership means the entities, oh, here we got it on screen. Okay, thank you. Oops, I just made it go away. There we go. So in C, domestic partnership means the entity formed by two persons who meet the following blah, blah. I would propose to change two persons to formed by people who meet the following criteria. I would then propose to delete C5. Then if you go down to section E, scroll down to 6-89E. Whoever has control of the screen, if you could scroll down, please. Oh, there we go. So in the middle line, where it says, so long as she or he has the intent to return, that should I would propose to change she or he to they. In 6-90A, where it reads in the middle somewhere, towards looks like the sixth line, well, actually towards the bottom, in the middle of the paragraph, shall be signed by both domestic partners, should be changed to all domestic partners. So basically just changing the word both to all. And then a little bit further down in B2, just scroll a little bit so we can see all of B2. Thank you. It reads, okay. Also in the middle, over on the left side, to the other domestic partner, that should read to all domestic partners. We're changing other to all and making partners plural. You know what? And I'm sorry, could you go back up to section A? I think I might have missed one in there too. Apologies. This is what happens when you're doing this on the fly. Yeah, sorry. So at the bottom of A, shall be signed by both domestic partners. Similarly, that should read signed by all domestic partners. And then then down in 2, I misspoke a bit. So in B2, where it says to the other domestic partner, it should say to the other domestic partners. And then a little bit further down in B2, actually right, that same paragraph, rather than at his or her current address, it should read at their current address, current or last known address. And then in the second to last line, appear before the city clerk or his or her designee. Well, I suppose that could stay. I would prefer to say there because his or her is binary. So why not? Let's make the whole thing non-binary. So shall appear before the city clerk or their designee. And those are the proposed amendments, Mr. President.
Very good. You have all that, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, I truly gave it my best shot, but I will need to get the document from Councilor Davis.
I have it all written down. It's foolproof, and everybody can read my writing, I'm sure, even though I couldn't at one point. But I will type this up and send it along as soon as if it is the will of the body to approve it. I'll send it along. Well, either way, I'll send it to you so that you have all of those changes in writing.
Okay. I should probably lay this item on the table until we get the official language. Would you agree with that, Mr. Clerk? Or do you think we can vote on this without having?
Mr. President, Mr. President, I would propose discussion on this if there is any, if at your will, of course. But you know, the detail of the changes I think is less important than the concept. The concept is not just to however many people feel that they want to commit to being a family in the city of Somerville. will be treated as such.
I understand that. I just don't want to have a vote on something when it's not on paper itself. But why don't we discuss the amendments in front of us? Is there any discussion on the amendments? Hearing no discussion. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the recognition, and thank you, Councilor Davis, for your skillful pen and your commitment to the principles that you've been espousing since day one. This is a quiet but important that I wholeheartedly support and could be happier to have before us for a vote tonight.
Very good. Any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll add, Councilor Davis, I definitely appreciate these amendments. I appreciate that you're looking out for people in the neighborhood. However, I am frustrated that you are outvoting me tonight on my own order. So, thank you for that, though. And Mr. Clerk, do you think we're ready now?
Mr. President, I can certainly get the text from Councilor Davis, whatever. If it's up to the council, if the councilors are ready to vote, we can have a vote. If councilors would like to see, a complete update, then that would take some time.
All right. Well, Councilor Davis, would you like to move for approval?
I would like to move for approval. I'm also in the process of trying to get the words to the clerk. So I'm happy with whatever the president prefers.
All right. Well, Councilor Davis moves for approval. Any discussion on that?
Seconded.
Second by Councilor Scott. Hearing no further discussion, I guess we'll call the roll.
So, Mr. President, this is a roll call vote on the amendments to item 21019. I'm sorry, not 210195. These are the amendments to item number 41, which is before this.
40, Mr. Clerk.
I'm sorry, yeah, of course, 40. This is
you know what?
the, right.
Point of order, Mr. President. It occurs to me that we probably skipped over enrolling or ordaining item 41. I might want to go back to that after.
All right, we're losing it a little bit. So let's stick with this item at hand. So are we ready for the roll call vote on these amendments?
Okay, this is on the amendments just outlined to item number 40, which is the Domestic Partnership Ordinance. On the amendments, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of those amendments. Those amendments are now part of item number 40.
Very good. You all set with your amendments, Councilor Davis?
Oh, the amendments are about to be on their way to the clerk, and I would move approval of the proposed ordinance as amended.
All right, Councilor Davis moves for approval, which requires enrollment and ordainment. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll for enrollment.
Mr. President, we actually have to approve this item before we can enroll and ordain it.
It's been a long week. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Please move for approval.
This is on the approval of item number 40, the Domestic Partnership Ordinance as amended. On that item, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Davis.
I muted myself when I thought I was unmuting myself. Yes, Mr. Clerk.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of that ordinance. Now that ordinance is approved and before the body for enrollment.
All right, on enrollment. Please call the roll.
On enrollment of the item, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of enrollment. That item has been enrolled.
And on ordainment.
On ordainment of the Domestic Partnerships Ordinance as amended, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin. Councilor McLaughlin.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of ordainment. That item has now been ordained.
All right, so now we have the previous item that was approved that requires enrollment and ordainment.
Yeah, Mr. President, if I may ask a point of order or procedure through the clerk, through you to the clerk, do we need to move for reconsideration of 41, or if that's been approved, I guess, but we haven't enrolled and ordained?
Item 41 was awaiting. Yeah, that would have been a good thing to roll in to a previous vote, but you had made a motion. You had made a motion to incorporate. Yeah, you had made a motion to incorporate it to replace the item in committee with this item.
Right, and we tabled that, but we probably should have remembered that it needed its own thing to happen. So I'd like to come back to that. Mr. President, I'd like to take item 41 off the table and move for enrollment ordainment.
All right, Councilor Davis moves to enroll and ordain item number 41. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
This is on the enrollment of the ordinance regarding the appointment of clerks of committee. On enrollment, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Absolutely, yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Oh, yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of enrollment. That ordinance has now been enrolled.
And on ordainment.
This is on ordainment of the ordinance regarding the appointment of clerks of committee by the City Council. On that item, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Counselor Ballantyne,
Yes.
Counselor Strezzo,
Yes.
Counselor Niedergang,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Scott,
Yes.
Counselor Ewan Campen,
Yes.
Counselor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors in favor. That ordinance has now been ordained.
Very good. Are we all set with the committee report, Mr. Clerk?
Thankfully, yes, Mr. President.
Mr.
Very
President?
good. Is that Counselor Scott?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Are these items appropriate for reconsideration in hopes that reconsideration fails?
If you so would like.
I would request that on item number 40, sir.
Counselor Scott moves for reconsideration in the hopes that reconsideration fails on item number 40. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll for reconsideration. So again, if you don't want to reconsider, you should vote no. If you do want to reconsider, you should vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the motion to reconsider item number 40, which is the Domestic Partnerships Ordinance, Counselor Klingon,
No.
Counselor Mba,
No.
Counselor White,
No.
Counselor Ballantyne,
No.
Counselor Strezzo,
No.
Counselor Niedergang,
No.
Counselor Davis,
No.
Counselor Scott,
No.
Counselor Ewan Campen,
No.
Counselor Rossetti,
No.
Counselor McLaughlin.
No.
Mr. President, I believe you read the instructions properly, but on the motion to reconsider the Domestic Partnerships Ordinance vote, the motion to reconsider has failed. So the item has not been reconsidered and is not before the body now.
Okay, so we're good or not good then?
The motion to reconsider the Domestic Partnerships Ordinance has failed. It is not before us.
So go ahead.
Let me just take 1 minute, please.
2-minute recess. Okay, we're reconvened and we're all set, correct, Mr. Clerk?
That's correct, Mr. President. I apologize. I'm the only one, I believe, that got tangled up.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm not the only one who messes up, so thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Strezzo wishes to be recorded as a sponsor of item number 25, and then we will move on to the regular order of business.
Certainly. Mr. President, item number 25 was a committee report, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. You're muted, Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it was 51, and thank you for recognizing that.
Oh, 51, okay. Please add her on to item number 51.
40.
Well, 40 was already in committee, so I don't think we can sponsor it at that point, but we just all voted in favor. So thank you all for supporting that. Now we will move on.
Returning to the regular order of business, we moved item number 26, which is report of the Committee on Public Health and Public Safety, which met as a committee of the whole on June 22nd.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee on Public Health, Public Safety did meet as stated. There were 6 members present. For anyone looking at the list of the attendance list, the reason why 5 members were absent for that meeting was that there was a Finance Committee meeting going on at the exact same time, so they were all there. So that's why folks weren't at this meeting. This was our first meeting to have a 2-week break in between this and the prior meeting. So we had a lot of data to review. We did receive a data update, and those slides are available. They're the better part of a week old at this point, and so I always, recommend taking a look at the city's coronavirus website for all the latest information. Otherwise, the minutes the minutes that are provided provide a detailed account of the discussion, and I would move that they be accepted as submitted.
Councilor Davis moves for approval of the committee report. Any discussion? Seeing
Yes.
none.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. I am just curious. This was marked as the committee of the whole, correct?
It was.
So I just want to know if the meeting minutes reflect that there was a conflict for 5 city councilors who sit on the finance committee.
Yes.
If that is not
I'll go ahead.
If that's not reflected in the meeting minutes, I'd like to have that added.
I know Councilor Davis mentioned it several times in the meeting, but can you confirm, Councilor Davis, that that's reflected in the meeting minutes?
Mr. President, I don't believe the minutes actually say that, and I'm happy to entertain an amendment to just add that statement at the top. I mentioned it 3 or 4 times during the meeting, and made a point of mentioning it tonight, but I absolutely have no objection to include it in the minutes themselves.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You know what? I'm sorry. I missed it. It is right up at the top. It is the second line. I went right past it.
Okay. You're all making me feel very good because everyone's messing up tonight.
No, it's right there. Our able clerks did a thorough job of recounting everything, and it's right at the second line before we get to the items that the 5 councilors were absent due to the finance committee meeting at the same time.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussion on the committee report? All right, we'll do a roll call vote on approval of the committee report.
Mr. President, there's a roll call vote on approving item number 26, the Public Health and Safety Committee report. On that item, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of the motion, and that committee report has been accepted.
Okay, next item.
Item 27 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of April Kunoff to the position of trustee for the Board of Library Trustees.
All right, unless there's any discussion on this, I'm going to refer to confirmation of appointments. Any discussion? Hearing none, it'll be referred to confirmation of appointments.
Item number 28.
Mr. President?
Yes, Councilor White.
Yes, these are the items that I mentioned about discharging from committee. So I would like to discharge item 210098 from the Committee on Licenses and Permits. It is a renewal of a garage license, master use cars at 121 Prospect Street. I had spoken with Councilor Scott. There had been an issue with this, but it appears to have been addressed. So with the consent of Councilor Scott, I would like it discharged and then approved this evening.
All right, Councilor White moves to discharge the item and move for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, the item is discharged, and why don't we lay it on the table for a vote after we take up the rest of these items?
Okay, thank you,
Mr. President,
Councilor White?
I would suggest that there be a vote to discharge this item from the
Okay.
Committee on License and Permits.
Roll call vote to discharge the item.
On discharge of that renewal of the garage license, Councilor Klingon,
Yes.
Councilor Mba,
Yes.
Councilor White,
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne, Councilor Ballantyne,
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo,
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang,
Yes.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Scott,
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen,
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of discharging the item. That license application or renewal is now before this body.
Very good. Any discussion on the item? Councilor Scott?
Yeah, just this is in my ward. It has been a very problematic business, and there were a number of issues during the COVID-related closures. However, the specific items have been addressed, but the holding this further in committee significantly impairs to the point of it taking this business's ability to function. For anybody who is concerned about this item in the ward, I assure you that our attention is still on it, and our ability to recall this for a revocation of the license is still entirely within the committee and the council's ability to pursue. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call for approval.
There's a roll call vote on the approval of item number 210098, which is a renewal of a garage license for mass used cars. On that item, Councilor Klingon,
Yes.
Councilor Mba,
Yes.
Councilor White,
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne,
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo,
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang,
Yes.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Scott,
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen,
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of that item. That license has now been approved.
Very good. Councilor White on the
President?
next items, please.
Yes. I move to discharge item 209973, which is a new extended hours license for Dunkin' Donuts at 282 Somerville Ave for 24/7 operation for in-store and takeout service only. Again, I've consulted with Councilor Scott on this, so first I would move to discharge.
Okay, and we need a roll call vote on discharging.
Yes, we do. On discharge, Councilor Klingon,
Yes.
Councilor Mba,
Yes.
Councilor White,
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne,
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo,
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang,
Yes.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Scott,
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen,
In the name of the 24-hour Dunkins, yes.
Councilor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted to discharge that item from the License and Permits Committee. That item is now before this body.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
President. I move to approve but yield to Councilor Scott.
Councilor White moves for approval. Any discussion, Councilor Scott?
Thank you. I just want to let my colleagues know this was due to multiple concerns and violations that had gone unresolved. Violations have been resolved. I ask for approval.
All right, on approval, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President?
Councilor
Mr.
Rossetti.
President?
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Through you to the clerk. Could we not table this and lump it with all the other items for approval coming after it?
I thought so, but Thank you for
I'm
the
sorry,
discussion, but we do have a motion for approval. I would prefer to get it done now, and we'll do that next time.
Okay, Mr. President, I just was of the, every other approval we are lumping together as a whole. The discharge, I understand, needs the roll call immediately, but once we agree to discharge it, I think we can just lump them together.
I think it's good advice, and we're going to call a roll call vote right now, unless people wish to leave it on the floor.
Call the question.
All question, please.
There's a roll call vote on the approval of that Dunkin' Donuts license. Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors in favor. That license has been approved.
Mr. President.
Okay. Councilor White.
Yes, I move to waive the readings of items 28 through 34. These are all renewals of licenses, and the clerk has assured me that everything is in order.
All right, Councilor White moves to waive the readings of these items and move for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none. Let's see how the agenda looks. Yes, let's do a roll call vote on this.
Roll call vote on the approval of the business license renewals before this body. Councilor Klingon. Say again, Councilor Klingon.
Oh, sorry, I said yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors in favor. Those licenses have been approved.
Very good. Next item.
Next, we move to item number 35, which is a communication from the U.S. Postal Service Manager of Governmental Relations, which responded to a previous item approved by this body about postal service operations during the pandemic.
Very good. This item is placed on file with a copy to Public Health and Safety.
Item number 37 is a resolution submitted by Councilor McLaughlin. The mayor moved the Rodent Home Assistance Program from the Department of Inspectional Services to the Department of Health and Human Services to streamline rodent assistance for neighbors.
All right, it's time for the important stuff, and I'm going to take about 45 minutes to discuss this. You know, we hired a rodent control officer that I affectionately called the Rat Czar a few years ago. I was very happy for that position. But it was placed under public health, and I do think that's the right place for it to be. But the actual baiting program for assistance for homes is under ISD. So we have a person who works beneath the Director of Public Health and Safety who has to coordinate with the Director of ISD to make sure that the people get the bait. Every budget year, we've noted that the bait is not used totally. And a lot of the ISD staff, you know, I think they'd acknowledge that they're not experts on rodents. And really, I just think this would be a much better place in public health and safety, so our Rat Czar can have access to this, so she can do as she sees fit with this. It only makes sense to me. I've spoken to the city about it. It would require no additional funding. And I'm going to refer this one to the rodent committee. And I see Councilor Klingon, Councilor Davis, Councilor Strezzo, and Councilor Scott. Everybody wants to sign on. And Councilor Strezzo would like to comment.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know I have a comment on this as a fellow Ward 1 resident. I'm really glad that this is going forward. I'm glad. your initiative of this. I think I think it's clear that this is the direction that this needs to go, to assist with the rat problem, and I fully support it. Happy to sign on.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on the item?
Mr. President?
Councilor Rossetti?
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to update you that in our recent Finance Committee meeting when Inspectional Services was before us, we went into great detail about the concerns here, and I gave specifics to the Director of Inspectional Services of what we hoped could instead happen, instead of what was happening today, which really wasn't happening. Now, we asked him, and he said he could, and he would, research the questions that constituents and the council had. And when he comes back before us, before we vote the budget, he will be coming back before us when we're at a meeting of the whole. He's coming back with answers to those suggestions. So I would like us to perhaps put this item into finance where we can post that particular item that we're voting on right now, Sarah, to come up under the same discussion, because we are going to be continuing discussion with the Director of Inspectional Services, and we could raise it at that time, as well as with Health and Human Services when they come before the Finance Committee. If the Chair of Finance would post it on the agenda for the evening of review with the Director of Health and Human Services. We need to get this moving along yesterday. And if we put it at Road and Committee, we're gonna have to wait till we can meet. Let's do it during the budget season.
That sounds great to me, Councilor Rossetti. Any further discussion? Hearing none, this item, oh, did I hear someone? This item would be laid on the table and referred to the Finance Committee. Next item.
Item number 38 is a resolution submitted by Councilor McLaughlin that the administration remove the 911 system from the police department and place it under civilian control to separate criminal complaints from mental health emergencies, substance abuse emergencies, housing emergencies, and other nonviolent offenses.
Okay, so this concept was brought to me by a Somerville resident, Katia Shop, and not saying that for a political purpose. I just want to acknowledge when people come to me with practical advice, and I think that this is a really practical concept. You know, the 911 system, if you ask people in the community, as we heard last night at the public hearing, a lot of people don't want to call 911 because they're afraid that a cop is going to show up for something that maybe a cop is not needed for. And the 911 system, like a lot of issues in the city, are controlled by the police department, and she issued a number of recommendations that I could share with people regarding removing it from, putting it under civilian control, and making it so that you can actually call 911 for emergencies that maybe don't require police presence. So that's what this is. I see a lot of people who wanted to sign on. I will add everyone to it unless someone objects, and I would like any discussion on this. Hearing no discussion, Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for putting this in. I fully support it. And at our previous meeting, this council approved a resolution to start a kind of broader conversation about a non-police response to non-violent emergencies. Things exactly like the ones mentioned in this. And I think that this is a very important and specific addition and component of that I fully support. And I just wanted to mention that I think there are many people, you know, an enormous number of people have reached out to me, and I'm sure to all the other counselors, wanting to be involved in these efforts. We know that the administration has publicly stated that they support the concept of this. And I think that although we don't know exactly what form it's going to take, the conversation about what this is going to look like over the next couple of years is initiated. And so I just wanted to reiterate the call to the public and, of course, to everyone on the council that I think once budget season is over, this really is going to be one of my top priorities, and I assume for many others, how we're going to actually start moving this forward. So thank you for this, and I hope that it is part of a much broader look at the system.
All right, I have Councilor Klingon and then Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to you, thank you for putting this in. It makes sense to me. I think it's a great idea. I think that it is going to be a little bit of a heavy lift. I think this is a lot trickier than it seems in black and white. I agree with Councilor Ewan Campen that I think it could, combined with the suggestion, the order that he put in around a sort of social worker force. This could definitely go together nicely with that, but this is definitely going to be a longer term strategy, that we have to take all things into account, but certainly absolutely worth having the conversation and worth moving the needle towards the type of policing and the type of emergency systems we want in the city as a whole. Thank you.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. I also want to echo, I'm excited about this. And I do have a question. What committee were you thinking of placing this? And
I'm going to refer to Public Health and Safety.
Oh, okay. I would even be interested in it being in community development, but yes.
This community development, which committee you mean?
For
Housing and community development, you mean?
It's community development for 38. But public health.
If you'd like to take it up, I have no problem passing the work on to you.
I don't know, it's pretty exciting.
All right. Well, then we will refer to the Housing and Community Development Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion? This item's laid on the table, referred to Housing Community Development. Next item, please.
Item number 42 is a new used car dealer license.
Move to waive the reading of licenses and permits.
Thank you.
This item will refer to licenses and permits. Did you want to waive the readings of all of these items, Council White?
I guess 43 probably should be read and referred to the Land Use Committee.
Okay. Let's see. We're going to refer item number 42 to licenses and permits, laid on the table. And the next item, Mr. Clerk.
Item 43 is communication. It's a zoning amendment proposed by 15 registered voters who are requesting the adoption of an amendment to the zoning map to rezone 6 parcels along Medford Street between School Street and Marshall Street.
Very good. Any discussion? Hearing none, this item will be laid on the table and put to the Land Use Committee with a copy sent to the Planning Board.
And then item number 44 is a communication submitted by 172 citizens, more or less, who submitted comments regarding the fiscal year 2021 budget. These are comments that have not previously been submitted to the board or to this council or the Finance Committee.
Councilor Clinton, did you have a comment on this, or was this on a previous item?
It was just on number 43. I just had a quick comment.
Okay. Would you like to make a comment on that now?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was just going to say that I was made aware of this by the community member, the registered voters who have brought this forward. I look forward to discussing it in land use, and yes, that's really it.
Okay, thank you. Item number 44 will be placed on file.
Mr. President?
Yes, Councilor Davis.
Mr. President, just a quick question. It's just a tactical question, I guess. I've not seen the attachment or the amendment on 43.
Do we have an attachment, Mr. Clerk?
Oh, if there isn't, that's my error. I apologize. There is documentation, including a map. I'll get that up as soon as I can.
Okay, much appreciated. Just so folks in the public can take a look.
All right.
Yes, no, that should.
If anyone still thinks we don't need a recess, I'm going to refer to this night. We will refer this to land use. as previously stated. Item number 44 will be placed on file. Do we have any more business before us, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, no, there's a few items that need a roll call vote, and otherwise there are no further items before this body.
Very good. Let's do a roll call vote on the remaining items.
There's a roll call vote on the approval of items 37 and 38 and placing items 35 and 44 on file. No action needs to be taken on the referral of the other items to committee. So it's just these 4 items.
Please call the roll.
On that motion, Councilor Klingon,
Yes.
Councilor Mba,
Yes.
Councilor White,
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne,
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo,
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang,
Yes.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Scott,
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen,
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor. That motion has been approved.
Very good. And now we have no items before us, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Councilor Klingon moves for adjournment. Please call the roll on adjournment.
There's a roll call vote on adjournment. Councilor Klingon,
Yes.
Councilor Mba, Councilor Mba,
Yes, I was muted, sorry.
Councilor White,
Well, I've been having so much fun, but I guess I'll vote yes.
Councilor Ballantyne,
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo,
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang,
Yes.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Scott,
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen,
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti,
Yes.
and Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of adjournment.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was fun while it lasted, but we are adjourned.